This is another podcast from Alpha Business Media. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're heading out, metaphorically speaking, to Nepal. It's a place that's really been shaped, you could say forged, by natural disasters. And our mission here is to explore how they've taken that experience, that trauma, and turned it into, well, a real driver for innovation. We're talking about ingenious early warning systems that are saving lives, literally thousands. And they're dealing with a double whammy, these huge earthquakes and the annual monsoon floods.
Yeah, and you really can't understand their solutions without looking at the geography first. Nepal sits smack bang on the collision zone between the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates. That makes it, one of the most seismically active places on the planet.
Right.
And at the same time, you've got these massive mountains and this intense monsoon climate. It's like the perfect setup for floods and landslides. Actually, nearly half of all the natural disasters they've faced in the last 50 years have been hydrological floods, landslides.
I love that.
Yeah. So you see why getting early warnings right isn't just like a nice to have for them. It's absolutely critical for survival.
Okay, let's dive into that. Let's start with the floods. The Terai Plains in southern Nepal, they get hit hard every year, right? Rivers like the Kosi, the Narayani, the West Rapti, they just swell up from the monsoon, overflow.
Exactly. And these aren't small floods. They're sudden, they're devastating, they wipe out crops, homes, and tragically, lives, especially in those rural areas where people are already quite vulnerable.
So faced with that scale of destruction year after year, how do they even start thinking about something like the community-based flood early warning system, the CBF-EUWS? It sounds so simple almost,
Yeah.
people-centric.
It is, and that's the genius of it. CBF-EWS blends the national infrastructure with really simple local know-how. You've got Nepal's Department of Hydrology and Meteorology, the DHM, providing that kind of national backbone. They run a network of monitoring stations across the country. A lot of these now have modern tech, like telemetry. So in the Narayani River Basin, for example, they use CDMA modems to send real-time water level and rainfall data straight back to Kathmandu. You can even see some of it online.
Impressive. But you said local ingenuity.
Ah, yes, this is where it gets really interesting. They have this network of, well, human sensors, basically volunteers in upstream villages. They call them post keepers. And their tools, sometimes just ordinary poles stuck in the river, marked with different colors. They're the eyes and ears.
Just poles in the river. That's amazing. So, okay, a postkeeper sees the water hit a danger mark. What happens then? How does that warning actually travel?
It's a really clear chain, the communication chain. First, the observation caretaker sees the critical rise.
Right.
Then the alert. They grab their mobile phone or maybe a VHF radio and immediately call the specific contact person in the downstream village's disaster management task force.
A direct call.
A direct call. And then the alarm. As soon as that downstream group gets the call, they jump into action. They set off local warnings, maybe sirens or using handheld megaphones, even announcements from mosques or temples.
That direct human connection seems key. I read a quote from Kamada Prasad Maurya, a task force coordinator.
Oh yeah, in Gangapur.
That's the one. He said, "We feel safer. We got the news of the flood 6 hours before it arrived. We had enough time to evacuate." 6 hours?
Exactly. Those 5 or 6 hours, they aren't just abstract numbers. That's time to save your family, move your animals, grab your important papers, your seeds.
It's the difference between losing everything and having a chance to recover.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It saved lives, protected livelihoods.
Yeah.
And it's worked across borders, too. There was a case where a warning from Nepal's Ratu River post actually helped people evacuate in neighboring India.
Incredible. So this gives people that most precious thing in a disaster time.
Precisely. Time to act.
It sounds so effective at the community level. But something like this doesn't just spring up on its own, does it? There must be a bigger support structure, a collaboration behind it all.
You're absolutely right. It's a whole ecosystem of collaboration.
Yeah.
It's not just the government, the DHM. You have international organizations involved, like ISAMOD, that's the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, and the World Meteorological Organization, the WMO.
Okay.
Plus, crucial work from NGOs like Oxfam, Mercy Corps, Practical Action. They're all working together. But like you said, the core is the partnership with the local communities, with their disaster management committees. They're not just recipients, they're active participants.
So does this approach offer a solution to that classic problem in aid and disaster relief? The last mile problem, getting the warning to the people who actually need it, way out in remote areas?
It really does. I think that's one of the biggest lessons here. So many warning systems are great at the big picture, the forecast, but they stumble at that last hurdle, getting this specific warning to the person in the village.
Right, the actual delivery.
Exactly. The Nepali CBFEFUWS model solves this by embedding the system within the community. The technology, like the telemetry, it's important, it helps. But the real heart, the soul of the system, it's the trust between the upstream watchers and the downstream villages. It's the local committees running drills. It's that simple phone call. You can break it down into maybe 4 pillars. First, the knowledge and risk analysis communities mapping hazards using local knowledge. Second, monitoring and warning those volunteer postkeepers backed by DHM's tech. Third, distribution and communication, that phone chain, the local sirens, flags, radio. And fourth, response potential, the local task forces, the regular evacuation drills, planning for livestock and property, the whole package.
Okay, so that's the floods, a system built on community, trust, and giving people time. But then there's the other monster, earthquakes. That feels fundamentally different. Seconds count, not hours.
You've nailed it. It's a completely different challenge.
Yeah.
Earthquakes are the next frontier, much more ambitious technologically, and the stakes are incredibly high. The real catalyst for pushing into earthquake early warning, or EEWS, was undoubtedly the 2015 quake.
A Gorka earthquake.
Yes, magnitude 7.8. Over 8,600 people killed, more than 22,000 injured just in Nepal. That trauma created this huge urgent need for any kind of advance warning, even just a few seconds.
But what can you really do in just a few seconds?
It sounds tiny, but it can be life-saving. A few seconds is enough time to dive under a strong table. It's enough time for automated systems to stop a train, halt an elevator, maybe even pause a delicate surgery.
Okay, I see. Little actions, big consequences. How does the science work? How can you possibly get a warning before the shaking starts?
It relies on basic physics, really. Earthquakes generate different types of seismic waves.
Yeah.
The first to arrive are P waves, primary waves. They travel fast, but they're usually not the damaging ones. Following them are the S waves, secondary waves. They're slower, but they carry most of the destructive energy. The EWS idea is simple. Have a network of sensors detect the arrival of the fast P waves. Instantly, an alert signal is sent out. And because that electronic signal travels at the speed of light, it races ahead of the slower, damaging S waves.
So the signal outruns the shaking.
Exactly, giving people that brief, crucial window.
And Nepal isn't just importing this tech, right? You mentioned local mines are involved. Who's leading the charge locally?
Absolutely. This isn't just about adopting foreign tech. Key Nepalese institutions are right at the forefront. Tribhuvan University's Institute of Engineering, the IOE, and the National Seismological Center, the NSC, they're real centers of excellence.
That's great to hear.
But they also knew this was a massive challenge, so they've been smart about building partnerships globally. For instance, they're working closely with Duke University in the U.S. and an organization called Geophysics Without Borders.
So it's a two-way street, not just Nepal receiving help.
Definitely not. James Merrick from Duke actually highlighted this. He said the IOE team brings these invaluable inside views and a deep understanding of what the community actually needs. The international partners might bring specific research tools or resources, but it's very much a co-creation.
That sounds like a much more sustainable model.
It is. Nepalese scientists and engineers are leading, adapting global knowledge to their specific context. It's about building local capacity, not just importing black boxes.
And talking about technology, they seem to be making some interesting choices there too. Something about keeping it affordable and open.
Yes, that's a really key strategic decision. Instead of going for, super expensive proprietary earthquake monitoring equipment, which can be way out of reach for many countries,
Right.
they're focusing on open source and affordable tech. They're testing things like the Raspberry Shake.
The Raspberry Shake, like the little computer.
Exactly. It's a low-cost personal seismometer. Affordable enough that schools or small organizations could potentially have one. The idea is to build a really dense network, and they're coupling that with platforms like OpenUW, that's Open Earthquake Early Warning, which is open source software for collecting and analyzing the data from all these sensors in real time.
So it's about democratizing the technology, making it accessible.
Precisely. It's not just cost saving. It means they can build a system that's scalable, that they can own and adapt themselves. Rather than being locked into one expensive vendor, it fosters local innovation.
This all sounds incredibly promising, both the flood system and the earthquake work. But for the EWS, the earthquake system, what are the major roadblocks? It sounds hugely complex to roll out nationwide.
Oh, the challenges are significant. First off, it's still very much in the pilot testing phase. They're proving the concepts. Then there are the financial hurdles. Bureaucracy can be slow.
Yeah.
There was a proposal, I think, for around $1.5 million just to get the first 76 sensors deployed, and it faced delays.
Funding is always an issue.
Always. And then there's the sheer logistics.
Mm.
Imagine deploying and maintaining thousands of sensitive instruments across Nepal's incredibly rugged mountainous terrain. It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
But maybe the biggest challenge is what you could call the new last mile problem for earthquakes. With the floods, the solution was a phone call, giving hours of warning. Simple, effective.
But for earthquakes.
For earthquakes, you have seconds. You need to deliver an alert instantly, automatically, potentially to millions of mobile phones simultaneously. That technology exists, but the human side is the really tricky part. How do you train a population of, 25 million people to react correctly and immediately to an alarm that might give them only 10 or 15 seconds warning without causing mass panic or confusion?
Ah, the behavioral challenge, that's huge.
It's enormous. It's not just about the tech, it's about building a culture of instant appropriate response. That's the frontier they're working on now.
So looking back at everything we've discussed, Nepal seems to be running these two tracks in parallel, doesn't it? Perfecting this community-based system for the slow, predictable threat of floods.
Yeah, honing that craft.
While simultaneously making this bold leap into high-tech solutions for the sudden, unpredictable terror of earthquakes.
Exactly. It's a dual strategy. And what's truly innovative, I think, isn't just one system or the other. It's how they're creating this kind of hybrid resilience, a model that respects and uses the traditional knowledge of the village elder and the complex algorithms of the seismologist.
Tradition meets tech.
Precisely. They've learned that technology, however advanced, is fundamentally just a tool. Its real power comes alive only when it's in the hands of people, of communities who are prepared, connected, and know how to use it effectively.
It really does sound like Nepal has become this sort of living laboratory for disaster risk reduction in the 21st century.
I think that's a great way to put it.
The lessons emerging from there about mixing low-cost tech with deep community engagement, building these effective local and global partnerships, and just that relentless focus on saving every life possible, they feel incredibly relevant for vulnerable places everywhere.
Absolutely. It's inspiring stuff.
So, a final thought for you, our listeners. When you hear about Nepal's experience blending high-tech sensors with simple phone calls, algorithms with village meetings, how might that change the way you think about being prepared? Not just for floods or earthquakes, but maybe for any unexpected challenge in your own life or community? How could that mix of technology and human connection make us all more resilient? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you'll continue exploring these vital topics.